I thought I was testing her loyalty, but I ended up exposing my own emptiness. The first thing I remember is the silence. Not the kind that calms you. The kind that presses against your chest and waits. I was lying at the bottom of my own staircase, staring at the chandelier above me, counting the seconds between footsteps that never came. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. The angle of the fall, the timing, even the faint smear of red across the marble floor, just enough to look real, not enough to cross a line I couldn't control. I had cameras hidden in the corners, watching everything, recording everything, because I needed to know. Needed to see what she would do when the world stopped revolving around comfort and appearances. Victoria Hale. My fiancée. The woman who said she loved me. The woman who said she would stand by me no matter what. I slowed my breathing, kept my eyes barely open, just enough to catch movement without revealing awareness. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then I heard it. The sharp click of heels against polished floor. She was coming. My pulse stayed steady, but something deeper tightened. This was the moment. The truth always reveals itself in silence. Her voice cut through the air, not soft, not panicked, just controlled. Adrian. A pause. Then another step closer. I waited for the rush. The panic. The touch. It didn't come. Instead, I heard her inhale sharply, like someone noticing a stain on expensive fabric. Oh my God, but there was distance in it. Calculation. Not fear. Not for me. I felt her presence near, but not close enough to reach me. Not close enough to kneel. Call someone, she said, her voice firmer now. Not to me. To someone else. Probably her assistant. Always efficient. Always composed. I waited for her to break. For her to drop beside me. To forget everything except the man on the floor. She didn't. The seconds stretched. My chest rose and fell slowly, deliberately. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing harder now, not because of the act, but because of what wasn't happening. She wasn't touching me. She wasn't checking if I was breathing. She wasn't even saying my name again. Another voice echoed faintly in the distance, confused, hesitant. Staff. Watching. Waiting for instruction. And Victoria gave it. We need to be careful. This could become complicated. Complicated. The word settled heavier than anything else. Not dangerous. Not urgent. Complicated. That's when I understood. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to feel something crack beneath the surface of everything I thought I knew. I had built empires on reading people. On predicting moves before they happened. And yet, lying there on cold marble, I realized I had never truly seen her. The silence returned. Thicker this time. Colder. And just when I thought that was all there was, I heard something else. Softer. Uneven. Footsteps that didn't belong in this world of polished control. Hesitant. Human. Sir? A different voice. Quieter. Closer. And for the first time since I hit that floor, someone actually came toward me. Sir, can you hear me? The voice was close now. Closer than it should have been. Not polished. Not controlled. Real. I kept my breathing shallow, steady, but something shifted in my chest. Not part of the plan. Not part of anything I had calculated. Her footsteps were uneven, like she was deciding whether she was allowed to be here. Oh my God, she whispered, softer this time. But it was different from Victoria. There was no distance in it. No calculation. Just concern. I felt it before I saw it. The hesitation lasted less than a second. Then she moved. Fabric brushed against marble as she dropped to her knees beside me. Not near me. Beside me. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence against the cold floor. Sir, stay with me, she said, her voice trembling, but her hands did not. They hovered for half a heartbeat, like she was asking permission from a world that had never given her any. Then they landed. Careful. Certain. One hand near my shoulder, the other checking for a pulse like she had done it 100 times before. Or maybe never. But she did it anyway. I heard Victoria somewhere behind her. Do not touch him, she snapped, her tone sharp now, irritated more than afraid. We need professionals. The girl beside me did not move. He needs help now, she said, barely above a whisper, but it carried more weight than anything else in the room. That word again. Needs. Not optics. Not consequences. Not complications. Just what mattered. I felt her shift closer, her sleeve brushing against my arm as she adjusted her position. She was not thinking about herself. That much was clear. Call 911, she said, louder now, her voice finding strength. No one answered immediately. Of course they did not. They were waiting for orders from the woman who never stepped closer than 6 feet away. The girl inhaled sharply. Please, she added, and that word changed everything. It was not a command. It was not power. It was something rarer. Urgency without authority. And somehow it worked. I heard movement. Finally. But she did not wait for it. She leaned in, closer than anyone else had dared. I could feel her breath, quick and uneven, as she focused on me like I was the only thing that existed. You are going to be okay, she whispered, and I almost broke character right there. Not because of what she said, but because she believed it. Even without proof. Even without reason. My vision blurred slightly as I kept my eyes half closed, just enough to see her outline. Light brown hair pulled back too quickly. Simple uniform. Nothing about her belonged in this house of tailored suits and perfect silence. And yet she was the only one acting like this was real. Because to her it was. Victoria spoke again, sharper this time. Step away. You are making this worse. The girl did not even look back. No, she said. One word. Quiet. Unshakable. And in that moment, lying there on cold marble, surrounded by people who owed me everything, I realized the only person willing to risk anything for me was the one who had nothing. You do not get to decide who matters, she said, and the room went still in a way I had never heard before. Not silence. Something sharper. Something that cut through hierarchy, through wealth, through everything I had built to keep control. I stayed where I was, body still, breath measured, but inside something shifted again, deeper this time, harder to ignore. Victoria let out a short, incredulous laugh, the kind that dismissed without understanding. You are overstepping, she said, each word precise, practiced. Step away now. The girl did not move. I could feel it in the way her hand stayed firm against my shoulder, in the way her presence anchored me to something real. He is not breathing right, she said, her voice steadier now, no longer asking permission from anyone. We cannot wait. There was a pause. A long one. The kind where people look at each other, not knowing who is supposed to take responsibility. I had seen that pause in boardrooms, in negotiations, in moments where millions of dollars hung in the balance. But this was different. This was about a man on the floor. And still, no one moved. Except her. I felt her shift again, closer, adjusting her position with quiet determination. Her sleeve brushed against my wrist, and for a second, I forgot this was a test. Forgot there were cameras watching. Forgot that I had designed every second of this. Because she was not performing. She was choosing. Sir, stay with me, she whispered again, softer now, like she was speaking directly to something fragile inside me. Not the title. Not the power. Just me. And that was the moment the plan stopped feeling like a plan. A flicker of something real cut through my control. Not panic. Not fear. Something quieter. Something unfamiliar. Victoria's voice came again, sharper, edged with frustration now. This is not your responsibility. Do you understand that? The girl inhaled slowly, and when she spoke again, it was different. Not louder. Not aggressive. Just certain. It is now. One sentence. No hesitation. No calculation. Just truth, as simple as it was inconvenient. I heard footsteps behind us, faster this time. Someone finally dialing. Someone finally reacting. But it was too late to matter. The damage had already been done. Or maybe the truth had already been revealed. I let my eyes open just a fraction more, enough to see her face clearly for the first time. Emily. I remembered her name now. Quiet. Efficient. The kind of person people forget is even in the room. Until they are the only one who steps forward. There was a faint line between her brows, concentration mixed with concern, but no fear of consequence. No awareness of what this could cost her. She was not thinking about losing her job. She was not thinking about crossing lines. She was thinking about whether I would be okay. And that was something I had not planned for. My chest rose a little deeper this time, no longer entirely controlled. For a split second, I felt the weight of what could have happened if she had not moved. If no one had moved. And suddenly, the test did not feel like control anymore. It felt like exposure. Not hers. Mine. Because for the first time in years, surrounded by people who claimed loyalty, I saw it clearly. Power can command attention. It can demand obedience. But it cannot force someone to care. And the only person in that room who chose to was the one I had never even noticed before. Do not let him drift, Emily whispered. and her voice was the only thing in the room that did not sound afraid of consequences. I felt her hand adjust again, more confident now, like she had crossed a line she could not uncross. The kind of line that changes people. The kind of line that reveals them. My breathing hitched slightly, not entirely intentional this time, and I felt her react immediately. Not with panic. With focus. Stay with me, she repeated, closer now, like she was anchoring me to something steady. I heard movement around us, faster now, more urgent, but still distant in a way that told me everything I needed to know. They were responding because she made them respond, not because they chose to. Victoria's heels clicked again, sharper this time, pacing instead of approaching. "Where is the ambulance?" she demanded, her voice tight, controlled, but edged with something that sounded dangerously close to irritation. Not fear. Never fear. Not for me. I let my eyes open just enough to catch her silhouette. Perfect posture. Perfect distance. Not a single crease in her composure. She had not knelt. Had not reached. Had not even tried. And somehow, that was louder than anything she could have said. Emily shifted again, closer still, her shoulder nearly touching mine now. "You are not alone," she said quietly, and the words landed heavier than they should have. Because they were not meant for the room. They were meant for me. For the man, not the title. And that was something I had not heard in a very long time. My chest rose deeper this time, breaking the rhythm I had set. She noticed instantly. "That is it," she murmured, a small note of relief slipping through her control. "Keep breathing." She believed she was helping. She believed this was real. And because of that, for a brief moment, it became real. Not the fall, not the setup, but the truth beneath it. I could feel it now, pressing in from all sides. Not the marble, not the house, the realization. I had built my life on certainty, on knowing exactly how people would react, how they would choose, how far they would go when tested. But I had never accounted for someone who did not calculate, someone who did not weigh cost against action, someone who simply moved. Victoria exhaled sharply behind us. "This is unnecessary," she said, her voice cold now, stripped of any pretense. "You are making a scene." Emily did not even look at her. "He needs help," she repeated, as if that was the only language that mattered. And maybe it was. I let the silence stretch again, but this time it felt different. Heavier. Not waiting for truth. Sitting inside it. I could hear the distant wail of sirens now, faint but approaching, echoing through the estate like something inevitable. The performance had reached its limit. The test had run its course. But I was not ready to end it. Not yet. Because for the first time since this began, I was not watching for her reaction. I was watching for Emily's. Watching the way she stayed. The way she did not flinch. The way she held steady even when no one stood with her. And in that moment, still lying there between control and truth, I realized something I could not ignore. This was never about who would panic. It was about who would stay. And only one person had not stepped back. Sometimes the truth does not arrive with noise, it settles in quietly, and then it refuses to leave. The sirens grew louder now, no longer distant, no longer ignorable, cutting through the stillness of the estate with a sharp urgency that should have come from inside the room, not outside of it. Emily did not flinch at the sound. If anything, she leaned in closer, like the approaching help gave her permission to hold on a little tighter. "They are coming," she whispered, not to anyone else, just to me, like reassurance was something she could give even without knowing who I really was. My breathing shifted again, deeper, less controlled, and this time it was not part of the act. The line between performance and reality had blurred somewhere in the last few minutes, and I could feel it slipping further with every second she stayed. Victoria exhaled sharply behind us, impatience now fully replacing concern. "Good," she said. Finally. There was relief in her voice, but not the kind that comes from fearing loss. The kind that comes from resolution. From handing responsibility to someone else. I had heard that tone before. In negotiations. In exits. In endings. Emily did not respond. She did not acknowledge Victoria at all. Her focus never left me. "Stay with me," she repeated, softer now, like she was saying it for herself as much as for me. Her hand shifted slightly, steady, grounding, and I realized something that unsettled me more than anything else so far. She was not waiting to be told what to do. She was not looking for approval. She had already decided. The front doors opened somewhere in the distance, voices echoing, quick, professional, efficient. The kind of response that comes when people are trained to act. But they had not been here when it mattered most. She had. I let my eyes open just a fraction more, enough to see her clearly again. Emily Carter. That was her name. I had seen it on payroll reports, on schedules I barely glanced at, attached to a role I never thought twice about. And yet here she was, rewriting everything I thought I understood about loyalty. Not with words. With presence. With action. With something that could not be bought, trained, or commanded. Victoria stepped closer finally, but even now, there was space between us. A careful distance. Measured. Controlled. Make sure everything is handled properly, she said, already shifting her attention to the arriving paramedics. Already moving forward like this moment was something to manage, not something to feel. Emily's grip tightened just slightly, almost imperceptible, but I felt it. Not possessive, not fearful, just unwilling to let go too soon. You are going to be okay, she said again, and this time, something in my chest responded before my mind could stop it. Not the act, not the test, something real. The paramedics reached us then, their presence filling the space with practiced authority, voices calm, hands efficient, questions already forming. Emily moved back just enough to give them access, but she did not disappear into the background like the others. She stayed close, watching, ready, like she would step back, and if she had to. And that was the moment I knew. This was over. Not the situation, not the performance, but the illusion I had been holding on to. I had created this test to measure loyalty, to confirm what I already suspected, but I had been measuring the wrong thing. Loyalty was easy to fake when everything was stable, when everything was safe. But when the ground shifted, when control disappeared, when there was nothing to gain and everything to risk, that was when truth showed itself. And the truth was standing right in front of me, not in tailored silk, not behind careful words, but in a simple uniform, hands still steady, eyes still fixed on whether I would be all right. And for the first time since this began, I was no longer thinking about how the test would end. I was thinking about what I was going to do with what I had just seen. The moment I sat up, everything changed, but not in the way they expected. The paramedics were speaking, their voices calm, controlled, asking questions I had no intention of answering yet, their hands moving with precision as they checked what they assumed was a real emergency. And for a few seconds longer, I let them continue, let the scene breathe, let everyone stay exactly where they had revealed themselves to be. Emily stood just behind them now, close enough to step forward again, far enough to let them work, her eyes never leaving me, searching, waiting, still carrying that same quiet urgency that had not faded even as help arrived. Victoria, on the other hand, had already shifted fully into composure, speaking to one of the paramedics with measured authority, explaining, directing, managing, as if this was a situation to be handled rather than a moment to be felt. I watched her for a second, really watched her, and realized there was nothing left to confirm. No doubt, no confusion, just clarity. And clarity does not ask questions. It ends things. I inhaled slowly, deeper than before, then moved. It was subtle at first, just enough to interrupt the rhythm of their routine, but it was enough. One of the paramedics paused. "Sir?" he asked, noticing the change immediately. I opened my eyes fully this time. No hesitation. No performance left in it. Just awareness. The room shifted. Not physically. Something else. Something harder to define. The kind of shift that happens when truth steps into a space built on assumption. Emily froze for a fraction of a second, not in fear, but in confusion, trying to understand what she was seeing. Victoria stopped speaking mid-sentence. Silence followed, but it was no longer empty. It was loaded. I pushed myself up slowly, ignoring the hands that moved to assist, because I did not need help anymore. Not from them. Not from anyone in that room. My gaze moved past the paramedics first, past the staff, past everything that had been noise, until it landed exactly where it needed to. On Emily. She did not step back, did not look away. Her brow furrowed slightly, concern shifting into uncertainty, like she was trying to piece together something that did not make sense yet. Good. She should not understand. Not yet. Then I turned. Victoria stood perfectly still, but for the first time since I had known her, there was something missing. Not composure. Not control. Something deeper. Something that had never been there to begin with. "You can go," I said, my voice steady, directed at the paramedics without looking at them. They hesitated, exchanging brief glances, but my tone left no room for interpretation. Within seconds, they stepped back, gathering their equipment, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier now that the performance was over. The front doors closed again. The echo lingered. I stood fully, adjusting my sleeve with deliberate calm, every movement controlled, every second intentional. No one spoke. No one moved. Because they were waiting to understand what had just happened, waiting for me to define it. But I did not look at them. Not yet. I took one step forward, then another, closing the distance between myself and the two people who had revealed everything without realizing it. My gaze flicked briefly to Victoria, just long enough for her to feel it, then shifted away just as quickly. She was no longer the center of anything. She had removed herself from that position the moment she chose distance over presence. And then, finally, I looked at Emily again. Really looked this time. Not as staff. Not as background. As the only variable I had not accounted for. The only truth I had not controlled. And quietly, without raising my voice, without changing my expression, I said, the only thing that mattered in that moment. You stayed. Emily blinked, like she was not sure she had heard me correctly, like the words did not belong in the same world as everything that had just happened. Sir? She started, then stopped. Her voice caught somewhere between confusion and hesitation, because people like her were not used to being seen, not like this, not by someone like me. I took another step closer, slow enough not to startle her, deliberate enough that everyone else in the room felt it. The shift, the focus. Victoria's voice cut in, sharp, controlled, but now there was something underneath it that had not been there before. Adrian, what is going on? She asked, and for the first time, there was a crack. Not in her tone, in her certainty. I did not answer her. Not immediately. Silence stretched again, but this time it was intentional. Directed. I let it settle around us, let it press into the space where assumptions used to live. Emily's hands lowered slowly to her sides, like she was unsure whether she had crossed a line she could not come back from. I am sorry, she said quietly, her eyes dropping for a second, not out of guilt, but out of habit. I should not have. No, I interrupted, my voice calm, but firm enough to stop her before she could retreat into something smaller. You should have. Her eyes lifted again, searching mine, trying to understand what I meant, trying to find the mistake she thought she had made. But there was none. Not from her. I turned slightly then, just enough to bring Victoria back into the edge of my vision without giving her the center she expected. This was a test, I said, the words simple, direct, without embellishment. The room reacted before she did. A shift in posture. A quiet intake of breath from somewhere behind us. Staff who suddenly understood they had been part of something they were never meant to witness. Victoria stared at me, her expression tightening, calculation already moving behind her eyes. A test? She repeated, slower now, as if saying it out loud would change its meaning. You staged this. I met her gaze then, fully, for the first time since I stood up. Yes. One word. No apology. No explanation layered on top of it. Just truth. She took a step forward, finally closing the distance she had refused to cross before, but now it felt different. Too late. That is not funny, she said, her voice low, controlled, but there was something sharp under it now. Not concern. Not hurt. Something closer to offense. I held her gaze for a moment longer, then let it fall away. Because whatever was there, it was not what I was looking for anymore. It was not meant to be, I replied quietly. And then I looked back at Emily. She had not moved. Not toward me. Not away. Just standing there, caught between worlds, trying to understand why everything had shifted around her. You thought it was real, I said, softer now. Not a question, just acknowledgement. She nodded once, almost instinctively. Yes. There was no hesitation in it. No attempt to change her answer now that the truth was out. Just honesty. And that was the difference. I let that settle for a second, then spoke again, my voice low enough that it did not need to be loud to carry weight. You did not wait. Another nod, slower this time, uncertainty flickering at the edges of her composure. I could not, she admitted. Not would not. Could not. Like standing back had never been an option for her. I exhaled quietly, not because I needed to, but because something inside me finally aligned with what I had just seen. Then, Without looking at Victoria again, I said the words that ended everything that had been built on the wrong foundation. That is why you stayed, and she did not. Victoria went still, not the kind of stillness that comes from understanding, but the kind that comes from being challenged in a way she was not prepared for. That is not fair, she said, her voice low, controlled, but sharper now, like every word had edges. You set this up. You manipulated the situation. I did not respond immediately. I let the silence stretch again, not to avoid her, but to let her hear what she had just said. Because fairness had never been part of this. Not in my world. Not in hers either. She just did not like being on the wrong side of it. I revealed the situation. I said finally, my tone even, steady. You chose how to respond to it. Her jaw tightened. Slightly, a small shift, but enough to show the crack widening beneath her composure. I was thinking logically, she countered, stepping closer, reclaiming ground she had lost. I did not want to make things worse. That is what responsible people do. Responsible. The word hung in the air, polished and precise, just like everything else she presented to the world. I glanced at Emily briefly, then back at Victoria. Responsible people do not hesitate when someone needs help, I said quietly. They act. Victoria exhaled sharply, frustration breaking through now. And what if it had been real? She demanded. What if something had gone wrong because someone untrained interfered? Her eyes flicked toward Emily for the first time, not with curiosity, not with acknowledgement, but with dismissal, like she was pointing at a variable that should not have existed in the equation. Emily stiffened slightly beside me, her hands clasping together unconsciously, like she was preparing for whatever consequence would follow. I felt it before I saw it. That instinct to step back, to disappear, to make herself smaller, so the room could return to what it had been before she disrupted it. She did not interfere, I said, my voice firmer now, not louder, but impossible to ignore. She responded. That stopped everything. Not the room, not the tension, just the argument Victoria was trying to build. Because there was no clean way around that truth. Victoria looked at me, really looked this time, searching for something she could still control, something she could still salvage. So that is it, she asked, quieter now, but more dangerous. You are going to base everything on a single moment. I held her gaze, steady, unshaken. People spend years showing you what they want you to see, I said. But a single moment shows you who they actually are. The words landed harder than anything I had said so far, not because of volume, but because of what they carried. Finality. She took a small step back, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I did. The distance had returned. Not physical this time. Something else. Something that could not be closed again. Emily shifted slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir, I did not mean to cause trouble, she said, and there it was again. Not fear for herself. Concern for the disruption. For me. I turned toward her. Fully now, the rest of the room fading into something secondary. You did not. I replied, my tone softer, but no less certain. You showed me exactly what I needed to see. Her brows knit together slightly, confusion still there, still trying to understand why this mattered so much. That was the difference. She was not performing for an outcome. She was reacting to a reality she believed in. And that could not be faked. Behind us, Victoria let out a quiet breath, something between disbelief and realization. Adrian, she said, my name carrying a weight it had never had before. Do not do something you cannot take back. I did not turn around, because I already knew. This was not something I wanted to take back. This was something I had been missing the entire time. And now that I had seen it, I was not going to pretend it did not exist. Power can choose who stands beside you. But only truth reveals who refuses to leave. The room did not move, but everything inside it had already shifted beyond repair. I could feel it in the way the air settled, in the way no one rushed to fill the silence this time. Because they all knew. Not the details, not the full weight of it, but enough to understand that something irreversible had just happened. Victoria's voice came again, quieter now, stripped of its usual certainty. Adrian, think carefully, she said, each word measured, as if precision could still regain control. This is not how decisions like this should be made. I turned slowly, not out of hesitation, but out of respect for what we had been before this moment, for what I had believed we were building. She stood exactly where she had always stood. Perfect posture, perfect composure. But now I could see it clearly. There was no depth behind it. No instinct to step forward when it mattered. Only calculation. Only distance. No, I said quietly, meeting her eyes without hesitation. This is exactly how they should be made. The finality in my voice settled into the room like something permanent. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. She held my gaze for a second longer, searching for something she could still reach, something she could still influence. But there was nothing left to negotiate. Not anymore. You are making a mistake, she said finally. Softer now, but no less certain in her own way. I let out a slow breath, not to steady myself, but to acknowledge what she believed. Because from her perspective, I probably was. Walking away from something structured, predictable, controlled. But that was the problem. I had built my world on control, and somewhere along the way, I had mistaken control for truth. No, I repeated, my tone unchanged. I am correcting one. Her expression did not break. It never did. But something behind her eyes dimmed, like a door closing quietly, without noise, without drama, just final. She nodded once, a small, composed gesture, then turned without another word. Her heels echoed across the marble floor, each step precise, each step measured, until the sound faded completely. And just like that, it was over. No shouting, no chaos, just absence. I stood there for a moment longer, letting the silence settle into something new. Not empty this time. Clear. Then I turned back. Emily had not moved far. She stood near the edge of the room, like she was unsure whether she still belonged in it. Her hands lightly clasped in front of her, her posture small but steady. Waiting. Not for recognition. Not for reward. Just for instruction. I walked toward her, each step deliberate, closing the distance that had never really existed until now. She looked up as I approached, uncertainty flickering across her expression, but she did not step back. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I stopped in front of her, close enough that she could hear me without effort, without the need for authority behind my voice. You thought you were saving a situation, I said quietly. But you did not. Her brows knit together slightly, confusion returning, because she did not see herself the way I saw her now. Not yet. I held her gaze for a second longer, then finished the only sentence that mattered. You saved me. The words landed between us, simple, unadorned, but heavier than anything else in that room. She inhaled softly, like she did not know how to hold that kind of weight, like she had never been given something like that before. I straightened slightly, the world settling into a new alignment around a truth I had not been looking for, but could no longer ignore. Stay, I said, my voice calm but absolute. She blinked, surprised, unsure if she had heard correctly. Not as a maid. And in that moment, for the first time since I built everything around me, I chose something I could not control, but I knew it was real.